I'm Jamie S. Rich. I've been working in comics for 20 years. Join me as we dig a little deeper into how comic books are made and get to know the people who make them. This is From the Gutters.
Alright, so now we've moved over to Dave's workspace within his studio, and we're going to actually take a look at the process of what it takes to color a page. Luckily today, he's currently working on Space Dumplins, the Craig Thompson project. So I assume you're getting then all these pages as scans from Craig?
Yeah, yep, he'll just upload them to his FTP file, and the way the page looks when I get it is like that. And Craig kind of breaks some of the elements apart for me, like the stars and stuff, so I can put those on a different layer. But that's what I start out with, and then I'll send that file to one of my flatters. And what a flatter does is they break the selections down for me, and it saves a lot of time. It's a step that kind of has to be done. And
what do you mean by the selections?
Well, so they'll just create a different shape for each of the elements, everything that needs a different color. And the way that works in Photoshop is I can just magic wand, those spots now and color inside them. First I'll drop in my color choice. I have the flatters kind of put in a pretty wild color palette so that I don't get confused with any of the colors. Like sometimes they'll drop in a red for, say, Spider-Man or something like that, and it's not Spider-Man's red, so I try to get them to stay as far as they can from the colors that I might be using. So they come back with some pretty wild looking pages, and then I'll just jump in and start laying in my colors, and I'll save their work in a separate channel, and that saves all the flat selections, so that if I start adding texture or something like that, that becomes a lot more difficult to select an area. So saving those initial selections is pretty advantageous. So,
And is it pretty rare these days that you get a page like this with the lettering already on it, since Craig's doing it by hand?
Yeah, that's very rare. Like everything is lettered separately and digitally, and I think most publishers prefer having that because then they can do translations and stuff.
Well, and then
like that.
time saving wise, like the letterer can be lettering while the colorist is coloring, and because you're usually the tail end.
Yep, yeah, definitely.
So once you've got it back and it's been flatted, how long does it generally take to do like a page like this?
Well, I try to do, if I'm doing a book like this, I'll try to do like 5 pages a day, and that's a pretty good pace for the amount of detail. Now, some of these, like this initial shot of this factory that's working on these clothes is really detailed, so stuff like that, takes a little longer, but try to average 5 a day. And I haven't rendered any of the clothing in this scene because I wanted to make sure that Craig liked the colors that I was using for the clothes. So,
what kind of direction did Craig point you in for this? Did he have children's books he wanted to look into, or?
Well, his, I think, influence for this stuff was a lot of the space movies and space sci-fi TV shows that he grew up with, like Alien and Star Wars. He really liked the feel and the design of those sort of movies.
So when you do the rendering, does that constitute a separate channel from the basic colors as well? Or does that all become one process together?
Yeah, it kind of becomes one process together. So what I would do on this kind of a thing, it's like everything's kind of based into the background layer, and I float the line art on top of that, and so I can work underneath the line art, and then any colored line art I have kind of floating above that, and just depending on different effects that I want to do, I might have a couple layers above this stuff, like on this page, like the stars are put on a different layer, and I'll probably render this space into a different layer so I can easily edit it.
Yeah, because when you showed us there, where you said you were floating the art and the black disappeared, that's basically what we were talking about earlier with blue line. That's what a blue line looks like under the black paint. Yeah. Except that those guys were painting without any detail. And that's what always amazed me. Same with like Brittany Miro on a lot of the Grendels did more like cell animation style painting, like Laura Allred used to do as well, where they're painting on the back and the colors coming to the front. So it's kind of interesting to see how that still carries over, that kind of basic building of colors and shapes. And
yeah, Photoshop doesn't seem as mysterious, like if you've done, worked in other parts of the art industry. It's really just as simple as having that acetate layer over the top of what you're painting. It all kind of makes sense at a certain point.
Do you have like a specialized toolkit for your different effects you like to use and the different rendering styles you like to use?
Well, I have sort of a basic set of brushes that I've created over the years, and I just sort of come back to the same ones sort of over and over again.
So what's the actual technique then? Like, how do you create a custom brush?
For me, it's just sort of trial and error and finding the right shape. But I think one thing that I probably do different than trying to make a brush that does everything that I kind of want it to do is I will change the size and shape of the brush quite a bit with the keyboard, so that sort of keeps a different sort of effect in what I'm doing. Like I can just suddenly add a lot bigger chunk of texture into something, or make it a lot finer. So changing the size of the brush probably makes my stuff look a little different, especially in like when I'm doing a watercolor sort of effect. And that's, with pressure sensitive brushes, that it adds quite a bit to what I'm doing also. But I think most people wouldn't do that. So like they'd try to work that sort of effect into a pressure sensitivity thing, and I'm always just sort of found that this process is a little easier to get what I want out of it. And then a lot of subtracting too, like adding and subtracting of texture, so to get the sort of effects that I want.
So when you say it's built as a shape, it's basically like if I had an actual physical brush and I was smashing it into the paper, it would create that shape. So it starts with that shape every time.
Yeah, and then let's see. So this has a certain amount of pressure sensitivity turned into it. Well, yeah, it's going to be hard to show what this actual shape is, but I mean, you can kind of see from the outline there that was just some sort of smudge from a pencil or a dry brush or something that somebody scanned in, and now I'm using it to do a lot of different stuff.
Because artists are always asking about what inking tools and brushes people use, so it's a similar thing. It's just finding the one that gives you what you're looking for.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even so much the brush as how you use the brush. So I think probably beginning with this, there was sort of a limited sort of amount of things that you could do, so I've always kind of worked inside of a tool's limitations. So it's always kind of a surprise to me, all the new stuff that you can do with Photoshop and stuff.
So how do you know when a page is done? Is it kind of just when it has to be, or?
Yeah, I'll work a page to a certain point, and maybe take a break. So I'll be working on 3 or 4 different pages at a time, or a scene at a time. And when I get a break, and I think I've finished the page, I'll put it aside and then come back to it if I have the time. And I think that always helps the process, because I'll see things that I didn't see before. You get a little too close to what you're doing,
Right.
to actually be critical. So, and I think after that, that kind of brings it home, that ability to give it a second look. But yeah, sometimes it just means that everything's rendered and everybody's, all the characters have the right colors in it, and then, it's off to the printer. But
Yeah, well, presumably you got your artist and your editor hopefully looking over.
yeah.
If someone wanted to be a colorist, like a young person out there, where would you recommend they start to learn this kind of stuff?
Well, I would definitely start painting and start learning how natural media works, because I found that helps quite a bit in what I do here, especially if you're trying to recreate something in natural media. I'm not necessarily like trying to trick anybody with what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to get the warmth that comes from using those sort of tools. So I would start painting, and then it's jumping into the computer and learning Photoshop. But you have to really kind of absorb and look at a lot of stuff when you're starting out, and sort of figure out how the craft sort of works, how the graphic elements of the comic work. So I was lucky enough to have to jump into Dark Horse when I started out. So I had a job, I was hired to do a job, and
Right.
they kind of taught me how to do that.
Do you have a different approach for when you're doing a cover and how you want to see it presented, or is it just kind of the same thing, but you're dealing with a single illustration?
It is, some of the basic elements sort of apply about how the eye moves over the image, and how you can facilitate that with color. And you may have a little more control over that in a cover, where the way that the panels are laid out may not always be conducive to that.
But you're saying you thought that you use color to direct the reader of how they look across the page?
Yeah, and a lot of the time that's sort of set up for you, but you can also kind of create a rhythm, like the way that the blues move across this page is, kind of guides an eye. Now, that was all sort of set up by Craig,
Right.
and maybe not with color necessarily in mind, but you can kind of see how the blues guide you across the page, compared to in the black and white.
Knowing that space is the space to put the same color, I guess, is
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
And then knowing not to use that blue, not to pick the green from his hair at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Because I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, and stuff like pushing. Now that's the natural color, that blueprint back there. But it's obviously really close to her hair, so something like that's going to have to be pushed back. And maybe I want to tweak the way that her hair looks in that panel, so it pushes off of this blue screen a little more. But
How do you keep yourself entertained down here for all those hours?
a lot of podcasts.
You're a podcast guy?
Yeah.
Do you audiobooks as well? Or?
Yeah. Yep. I do audiobooks.
Do you ever watch stuff, or are you all just purely listening?
Mostly listening. Yeah. It slows me down too much to watch too much TV or anything. So yeah, just whatever is interesting. There's a lot of great Buddhist podcasts out there that I've learned a lot from. So that kind of thing's cool too.
That keep you calm when you want to strangle Mike Mignola.
I'm breathing deeply and meditating.
I know some editors that could use that. Well, thank you so much for taking us through all this, Dave. It's been really fascinating, and I think people will find it helpful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the interest.
All right, we'll let you get back to work.
Right.
Craig's coming.
Yep.